Leaders of Tomorrow, the only show on Indian television where you, the MSME, get center stage to voice your opinions and thoughts. This is ET&R's special daily initiative to give entrepreneurs and MSMEs the opportunity to be front and center in every industry and area that matters to you. Tonight on Direct Connect, we'll answer your questions sent to us earlier and later on the show. CleanMax Solar coming up on our influencer segment tonight. On Direct Connect, we have Sushant Mitra, founder and CEO of Lead Angels, as well as Sunil Gupta, angel investor and mentor, answering your questions sent to us earlier. Take a look. Sunil, Sushant, thank you very much for being with us here tonight to answer questions very quickly. Let's take in our first query. This is a question that's coming to us on our Facebook page. Pradeep Lalji has sent us this question on Facebook. He says he's in the dairy business and his question tonight for our experts is he wants to know how he can educate farmers about their products and explain the benefits of these products to their customers, which is the farmers. And he wants to know how to convince milk cooperatives to help distribute the product to their members and help each one to come out of poverty. So on one hand, the farmers, which is sourcing of the raw material, and two is the end consumers, which is the milk cooperatives that he's selling to. Maybe I could start with you, Sunil.
See, I understand Pradeep is into milk-based product business. So typically, I think he can follow Anand and that Amul-based model, where there are cooperatives, doing that kind of education. At the same time, also helping in terms of the distribution network. So I think what he can do is he can start with this kind of a cooperative model of Anand and Amul, which is already proven. Get them some kind of interested into their product either by incentivizing or equity, and help them in terms of training and as well as distributing their product.
Sure. So I think one of the other successful models of penetrating into the rural market is the microfinance agencies. So I would say get a sort of a partner in the village who will then go on and get the other people on board, because you can't get all of them on board at the same time.
Okay, Pradeep, that's in response to your question. There are already proven successful models that you can emulate, so do look at those and do look at bringing on a partner who can possibly help publicize your business. Let's move on and take in our next question, and this is coming to us from Neil Jain. Neil has tweeted at us to say that he's an exporter, manufacturer and supplier of food flavors and essences. He says he doesn't have an R&D book or any references, and he wants to know more about R&D as well as new technologies which are upcoming. He's sent in this question for our experts tonight to ask how he can get into this and what are some of the things that he needs to consider before setting up such a department. Let me come to you first.
Yeah. So one of the ways to look at it is what his competitors are doing. What are their R&D processes and so on. Also, there are government research institutes in these areas, and there's a lot of interesting work that they may have done, but getting access to them and getting to interact with those people is not an easy thing, and he should know that dealing with any government organization has its own time and other constraints, but that is an area which maybe others do not explore and could give him an advantage in the market.
Okay, so particularly for a business like this, he should have something that's differentiating himself from the others, and therefore R&D is essential.
There is already an online platform available worldwide. In fact, FSSAI, which is the Food and Safety Standards, they have an agreement with that database to give that client access to what are the standards, what are the regulations, what are the constituents of a food, what are the acceptable pesticides or those kind of things in a food market. So he can approach those kind of a database access. The other thing is to create an R&D book. What he needs to do is he needs to do a lot of data collection in that, which is of data collection of the various ingredients. At the same time, there are models which are linking of product formulation, product composition, chemical composition, customization and iteration of these models can definitely help in creating an R&D book for his business.
Okay, sure. So there are lots of options for you to look at, Neil, when it comes to developing and creating that book, the R&D book that you're talking about, like our experts are suggesting. So do take a look at that. Our next query is a call coming to us from the line of Vijay Kumar. Go ahead, Vijay.
We are into plastic business, and I want to expand this business pan-India, and I want my base of operation to be formed in Karnataka. So what could be the step taken to take my business ahead?
Okay, so two things. One is he wants to expand it pan-India. But the second is that for whatever reason he wants to base it out of Karnataka, out of the south. So what would you have to say?
See, if he wants to expand, obviously he must have done some exercise in terms of assessing the demands across the geography. In terms of how do he expand is basically if he's of a storefront or a retail kind of a business, there is an investment involved in terms of setting up those kind of stores. So one has to look in terms of model, in terms of how do one reach out to the various geographies by assessing those demands and creating the right kind of infrastructure and the reach to that kind of a marketplace. Sure. In terms of controlling from the one place is okay as long as you can roll out the best practices what he's following currently to the other locations, so there is a kind of a consistency of supply chain network he is getting into place to cater to that kind of a market.
Sure. Sushant?
Yeah, I think he must have done his homework to choose Karnataka, but I would say that given that plastic transportation is expensive, the nearest that he is to his larger target markets, that's where he should set up the manufacturing facilities and then expand from there. And maybe given the typical costs of transportation, and there are factories available in other parts of the country, he might think of outsourcing production from the other units.
Sure. All right. So do look at what makes sense for you in terms of where your manufacturing base is. One of the suggestions coming in from our experts tonight for you, Vijay. Thanks very much for calling in with that. Our next query is coming to us from P. Bhakta. He sent us an email. leadersoftomorrowtimesgroup.com is where you can also send us your questions. Bhakta says he's an exporter and manufacturer of safety equipment. His question tonight for our experts are what are some of the marketing strategies he can follow to maximize profits. He also wants to know how to retain regular buyers for his products. So, regular buyers as well as maximizing profits.
See, the three mantras I would recommend for him was that to have a loyal base of customer, it's important that he has a constant customer relationship with those customer base. At the same time, he develops a strong linkage and relationship with his suppliers and create an extensive distribution network for the whole network. So in terms of expanding, he should obviously use some of the digital and the social media tools to reach out to that marketplace, and it could be through an optimized website or it could be through various social media tools.
Sure.
See, investment in customer retention, decreases the cost of customer acquisition. Yeah. So it's good that he is thinking of a loyalty, and that will come by constantly providing support after sales and building relationships so that there's stickiness in terms of customer coming back again and again, and in turn reducing the whole cost of customer acquisition.
Okay, so he's also asking on maximizing profits, Sushant. What would you recommend?
No, I think as Sunil said that, retaining your existing customers itself is the way to get, reduces your marketing costs and therefore maximizes your profit. The other is that, he should look at which are the particular customers who give him the maximum amount of profit and actually do customer by customer analysis and then focus more on those customers who are giving him more profit. And maybe if he needs to churn some of his customers who are not actually adding to his bottom line.
Okay. All right. So, lots of ways in which you can expand and retain your existing customer base, including, of course, after sales service is what our experts are recommending for you, Bhakta. Our last query tonight is coming to us from Kapil Pathare. Kapil has written in to us on our Facebook page. He's in the clothing, the textile industry. He says he's a manufacturer of men's innerwear, kids innerwear and ladies innerwear. He's written in to us to ask our experts what kind of infrastructure model would be suitable for today's MSME and SME sector.
From infrastructure point of view for his industry, obviously he has to invest into the sewing machines, dye and cutting machines, and nowadays there are very high-tech machines available at a cheap cost, which is laser technology based. So I think he should look at those investment into. At the same time, he should invest into small software which helps in waste minimization. So he can invest into small amount of CAD/CAM related software where he can minimize those waste. At the same time, invest into the laser cutting technologies of sewing machines and all. Yeah.
Sure.
My suggestion is use the latest technology, but at the same time, it is possible that second-hand equipment may be available at at an economic price to consider that. Even today, people are looking at leasing rather than buying. He could lease that equipment, or at the last level, he could even think of outsourcing the manufacturing and focus more on marketing and so on.
Okay, all right. So, Kapil, that's in response to your question. We've run completely out of time on this episode. Sunil, Sushant, thank you very much for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Time for a break. On the other side, we'll bring you a segment of Influencer with the top management of CleanMax Solar. Do stay tuned. Welcome back. You're with us here on Leaders of Tomorrow, and tonight on Influencer, we're bringing you up close and personal with CleanMax Solar. I caught up with CleanMax Solar earlier about renewable energy in India, how more companies can be encouraged to go green, pricing, as well as the way forward for the company. Take a look. Thank you very much for speaking with us here on Leaders of Tomorrow, Sushant. Let's start today's influencer segment by talking about your journey. You're a young entrepreneur. So what was that journey like? Why did you decide that this was a segment that you wanted to get into?
Thanks for having me, Sunanda, on your show. I mean, for me, the thought of being a young entrepreneur, being an entrepreneur, did not originate from wanting to be an entrepreneur at all. When I was in college in IIT Bombay, I realized that, you know, climate change is probably one of the biggest sort of challenges to the human race at the moment, and I just wanted to be part of it. Okay. At the time, there wasn't much of a sustainable development industry. I remember there were no jobs on campus for someone like me who wanted to be part of that space. And so I went fishing in the market, found something for myself, and a year later, I think I understood that industry much better. It was also very nascent, and Andrew, Kuldeep, and I came together to start CleanMax Solar.
Okay, and how, what's the journey been like? I do know that the government has been going all out to talk about solar energy. In fact, 100 gigawatts, correct me if I'm wrong, of solar energy is the target by 2022 according to the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. How much of that can private industry tap?
Look, in my personal opinion, 100 gigawatts is not an unreachable target by any stretch of the imagination.
Even in a country like India?
I think especially in a country like India. I mean, we are one of the fastest growing consumers of power. More and more energy is needed to serve sort of people getting out of poverty segment. We have more growth in energy consumption than most parts of the world. We're also, as a market, one of the largest in the world. We happen to have great sunlight. So from a solar point of view, I think India has got all the fundamentals in place.
The effort in terms of India becoming a clean energy country seems to largely be led by the government. Is there enough awareness, information, you know, for businesses, for companies, for households to understand that, yes, we should go solar?
Look, I think it's commendable what this government has done in terms of catalyzing rooftop solar, right? And I say catalyzing because it's different from sort of thinking earlier where you could throw money behind solar in terms of subsidies. I think what this government has very successfully done has identified where rooftop solar is not working well right now, the segments that are not adopting it, and have made policies and catalytic investments in terms of subsidy, etc., to get those moving. So, for instance, in 2014, so the government, through its Solar Energy Corporation of India, launched subsidy programs specifically to these, which you know, the subsidy could be directed only for projects which were on educational institutes or government buildings, and that's worked well to open up that segment. So it's a lot of bang for the government's buck. Okay.
So what percentage of your revenues right now in the Indian market come from small businesses that are using solar?
Look, small businesses, I mean, the fundamental for rooftop solar, which is what we really pioneered in, is that you need a large roof, right? If you want to have your own rooftop solar plant. A lot of small businesses don't have that. So that makes it a little difficult for them to sort of take benefits of solar power. And even if they do, often the credit profile they bring doesn't necessarily encourage people like us to put money into a solar plant on their roofs. Okay. So most of the solar plants we work with are invested in by us rather than the end user. Small businesses, I think, are participating in the solar industry much more directly by being part of the supply chain, by being part of the solar industries.
Let's talk about pricing. What has pricing been like in the Indian market? What sort of trends are you foreseeing as far as pricing goes?
A lot of commercial and industrial users are cross-subsidizing rural and underprivileged homes. The government buys, the discoms, which are government PSUs, buy power at something like 3.5 rupees, and customers often get power at about 9 rupees.
Okay.
Which really opens the market for players like us who can provide an alternative source of power, like solar, at something like 5 rupees a unit. Because an industrial customer who has 9 rupees a unit, seeing 5 is more than delighted to go ahead and save that 40%. In 2011, the cost of a solar system was something like 10 crores a megawatt. That number today is sub 5 crores a megawatt. So it's given people the feeling that let's wait it out, and 5 years later we could have almost zero cost power. But unfortunately, you can't have zero cost power.
Okay.
So what we're seeing in the last few months, which is unprecedented in the solar industry, that solar prices have gone up for the first time. Just the core price of imported solar panels has gone up by 20% in 6 to 8 weeks.
Speaking of the long term, GST, that's definitely going to be beneficial in the long term. That's what every industry tells us. But in the short term, what kind of impact are you seeing?
Look, I'm a fan of GST as an individual. I really think India's tax regime needed to go through an overhaul, and GST is a big step in that right direction because of the value-added nature. Unfortunately, as a solar developer, though, it hasn't worked terribly well, and that's because our input is equipment, which we pay GST on at various levels for various, ranging from 5 to 28% on different equipment. But our output is electricity, which means, and electricity is not in the GST pool at all, which means all the GST we get has no offset, and we're capitalizing all of it. So today, all solar developers are taking about a 10% increase in system costs, because all the GST is simply getting added to the cost with no output at the other end. I would urge the government to find a way around it, because this is a sector that is so much in their focus. And I know they've taken a few measures since GST was announced also, which is to announce lower tax rates, lower GST rates on some of the equipment.
Sure.
But the real problem is that there isn't an output. It's not the tax rate itself. So yeah.
Okay, sure. Very quickly then, as we're winding down this interview, I noticed that you're likely to get 40% of your total revenues over 3 years from your global markets. How are the global markets panning out for you, one? And what can small businesses in India learn from the global peers?
Look, it's early days in the global market for us. Our thought doing that was, look, we've been very successful in an emerging market, probably the largest emerging market outside of China. We've captured 25% market share consistently for the last 3 years. We've been the #1 player. We're also now funded by Warburg Pincus, and therefore, probably the best capitalized player in the rooftop sector, rooftop solar space. And so that's what we've been doing. We've gone to Middle East, we've gone to Southeast Asia. But it's very early days for us. It's been no more than 6-7 months since we got this started, and I'm personally involved in some of that. I think what can they learn from global players? I don't know. There aren't any global players right now. So we are the only solar player in Asia who's going pan-region. So I think there's a lot for us to learn, and then partner with MSMEs in how we can make that happen.
Sure. What are the next few years looking like for you?
We're, of course, very positive and optimistic, largely because of the way things have been for us. I mean, we were 3 guys in 2014, till 2014, and we're a 170, 180-person team now, about 300 crores in revenue. We've got some great investors backing us. So we're extremely positive on 2 aspects. One is, of course, how much volume we can contribute to the Indian solar story, and the other is how we can spread geographically to become a platform across emerging markets. So we remain terribly positive on solar and on ourselves.
Okay. We started this conversation by talking about your journey as a young entrepreneur. Let me end this interview by coming back to that.
Sure.
And asking you to talk to our viewers about what, in your mind, you think have been some of the biggest strengths of being a young entrepreneur. What have perhaps been the biggest then challenges as well, and how maybe you've overcome those?
I think, a lot of my generation, I'm 30 years old, we have parents who grew up trying to put food on the table, clothes on our back, and those were their priorities, and therefore they had a certain risk aversion. They were capability-wise no different from any of us, I think, maybe even more capable, but they were risk averse because they had very pressing sort of immediate bottom of the pyramid needs to fulfill. I think we have unfortunately carried forward some of that risk aversion despite not having those needs. So when I was in college, when I was just out into the working world for the first time, my view was that if I'm going to take a risk, what better time, right? There's a safety net, there is qualification as much as it could be, and the market is easier to do business in than it has been in the last 50 years. And I think it's not been easy at all, but that's part of the challenge for people my age, to get to do something where there's an uphill task, challenge yourself every day, and see if you can make something of it. So it's been tough. Some of the bigger challenges have been, I think, around uncertainty, because as Indians, as people who grew up in the middle class, we're not used to or comfortable with uncertainty. We don't like not knowing what's going to happen a year, especially if you go through high quality education. The intent is always that, look, after that, it'll be sort of a smooth sailing. And when that doesn't play out, it tends to make you nervous. I think the biggest part is always emotional, getting over your own fears. And I mean, it's always there's no guarantee of it working. So sure. I don't know if there's a formula for how to succeed, etc. But certainly I think the challenge itself is really the end goal.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Sushant, very much for
so
coming
much,
down to our studios. That's our episode tonight. If you have any feedback for us, any comments, any questions, do remember our email ID is leadersoftomorrowtimesgroup.com. On social media, tweet at me at Sunand_J or LOT_ET now. That's our official Twitter handle. On Facebook, we're at Leaders of Tomorrow and ET now. You can also call us on that number you see on your screen. We love hearing from you. Thanks very much for watching. Have a good night.